fact that that's like a random and kind of less specified like way to go about it, it makes it so there's a lot less to worry about in regards to like trying to do political favors for people or economic favors for people and that sort of thing.
We also think that in democracy, you don't have to pick a side. You shouldn't have to pick a side. Democracy should be used to benefit the most amount of people in the most effective way possible, rather than used to push a specific agenda or specific political aspirations. We think that democracy is a good way to go about that.
And finally, for the literacy issues, so from the history, we were able to see that most corruption from the people that have been most considered to be the most qualified. So for the people that they need economic support for them to do something, so they probably gonna say something that is benefit for those company or who are those people who give them economic support. So they're not really gonna speak out for the people who really need their voice in the society. But for the democracy, people are got rights to speak out for themselves instead of letting other people to like speak for the rich people, not for themselves.
Furthermore, just to conclude, the idea that Lotocracy removes choice, we believe is not accurate, given that Lotocracy actually enhances representation, as we've all stated, rather than removing choice, because traditional voting systems often result in a government dominated by career politicians that are out of touch and solely represent the needs of corporations, lobbyists. We see this now in the United States with, for example, the Republican Party representing the needs of the NRA, which is a really big donor of the party, and with Lotocracy, you are removing this entirely from government, making it more transparent and more representative of people's needs.
Thank you very much. All right, so at this stage, we've got the rebuttal for the inside. Inside, what was yours?
So the first thing about diversity, I wanted to respect the disagree because there's no guarantee that randomly selected positions will align with public opinion on key issues, and this could lead to policies that don't reflect the will of the majority. And you guys have claimed that the choice for the people wouldn't be on when they're voting, but it would, because you guys are talking about how anyone could be chosen and that counts as their public choice, but you guys aren't focusing on how they will be able to choose who they're voting for. You guys are focusing on how it will be diverse because of the people that are randomly selected, but that doesn't represent the people that they're actually going to make.
And so like just continue off of that, you guys say autocracy choosing leader by lottery removes bias from politics, such as like removing like money, power, party influence. But how does that affect like the selection process itself? Like how do you guys control that variable? As in, do that to be a citizen? What's the age gap? Like who can people volunteer? There's no restrictions, no like that can control this type of lottery system. And secondly, personal bias doesn't just disappear. Everybody has their own beliefs and everyone has their own biases. So those people who are chosen randomly or who are elected, they still have control over everything that we have to choose for. And their knowledge and influence matters. Not everyone has experience or understanding to handle complex policies. So is there some type of education gap that you guys are going to consider? And let's not forget how like the whole entire system is controlled by somebody, and that person who controls the entire system has designed the lottery, set the rules, and oversee the process. If those in charge of their own interests, they can manipulate the system in the way to favor certain groups, even if the selection itself is random.
So yeah, and like another point that you guys made was that like time spent when it comes to representative democracy, a lot of time spent is like keeping that position and campaigning and stuff like that. But what's I kind of forgotten on when making your point is that one of the main parts of like representative democracy is that there's a connection with the people, so people know who they're voting for, people know what they're doing, people know what they want to go for in the next election, and like why they should keep them there. With autocracy, that's completely taken out. You do not know who's become your elected official, you do not know what they believe in, you don't know their beliefs, you don't know, as previous mentioned, their biases and stuff like that. So I think that's like something that's like benefit of representative democracy is that you know who you're voting for, you know the connection with the person, and it's like honestly, like specifically in America, it's even a part of the culture when like politicians come out to let's say like schools, do like public talks and stuff like that, campaigning sometimes. People like to see what they're going for, people like to know what they're putting their trust in. With autocracy, that's completely taken out. Trust is just gone. Of the past with autocracy versus representative democracy, you know who you're trusting, you know who you're going with. Granted, yes, there's some things that happen, but it's versus blind trust and educated trust. And would you rather blind trust, educated trust? Personally, I'd rather educated trust. With autocracy, you can't have that.
So yeah, yes. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll go back to the floor side here for some questions. So one question I want to just ask your overall view on is there's a way in which autocracy as a model enhances the power of individuals who are chosen to serve through lines. But how might that affect the kind of participation in politics from everyday citizens? So is there a way you guys think of what participation is going to be like in a democratic public? Is it that people are disengaged from politics unless they are chosen, in which case they're very involved? Or are there mechanisms by which people would still be involved in daily life since they're not voting on a regular basis? And like, are you concerned about that kind of everyday participation?
That's a really good question, and it's obviously a very valid concern. It's evident that in autocracy, citizens aren't voting on who is representing them. But even though it may seem that there is less direct political participation, the ability for citizens to be involved in government in a way that in a representative democracy they cannot is really valuable, because in autocracy, even though citizens aren't voting, they have the ability, whether you are rich, poor, black, white, it doesn't matter where you come from, whether you are an executive, whether you are a farmer, whether you are a teacher, you have the ability to be chosen to represent the needs of all citizens. It's obvious that it's possible that certain people might not know the needs of all citizens, but the idea behind autocracy is that you are creating a diverse group of people with diverse backgrounds, so it's a mix of men and women, and diverse professions, so they know what their needs are, versus in a representative democracy where politicians are out of touch and cannot accurately represent the voice of these citizens because they don't know what their needs are. So overall, it is true that there may be less direct political participation, but voting is not the only way to be involved politically. And I think that that's kind of an oversimplification of what being involved politically really is. Obviously, being involved in government is super valuable, but there are also many ways to lobby, pressure the government, protest, and citizens can definitely be involved politically in those ways too.
I'll just add one small thing to mention the fact like education, and you're saying like how people might be more inclined to educate themselves on these matters. The fact that a lot of times people that are able to actually attain education, especially higher education, usually have more agency, capital, whatever. Like they have more freedom to be able to do those things, and there usually are people that historically or systemically like have just more in general. So think about like the people that are going to end up having a better education are going to be the ones that were initially kind of on the top of the totem pole in the first place. So you're not really like changing the part of the societal makeup that we already have. You're not really kind of shaking things up more or less. You're kind of keeping those in power and keeping those that like would supersede them kind of along that path, and keeping that like that streamlined process kind of in place.
Another thing I think is that it would also get the youth of America more involved in their politics instead of relying on others, just because people, like everyday people, their neighbors, their parents, their teachers, anyone that they're growing up with could be involved in democracy, and they'll learn more about it by experiencing it that way instead of just knowing that it's these people that they don't know and it's more out of touch in representative democracy.
So my second question is about an issue that the size brought up briefly, I just want to get more attention to. And that was the way in which the media acts as an accountability mechanism within representative democracy. So it seems like one of the reasons why media accountability mechanisms, people who vote regularly want information on what parties are doing. And so oftentimes that creates an environment in which the media can like investigate politicians or investigate what's going on. But do you worry that that kind of accountability through the media might be lost with a lot of practice?
I can start. I think that that is a valid concern as well. But I think that currently saying that the media does a good job of exposing corruption and exposing the certain political parties is quite out of touch in my opinion, because for at least the major media outlets in the US are funded by Republicans or Democrats. So for example, I mean, I'm not sure that anyone with proper like source reliability interpretation mechanisms would evaluate that Fox News does an accurate job of criticizing the Republican Party simply because they are really big donors and the Republican Party funds many Fox News outlets. So I think that although it can be perceived that the media does a good job of maybe holding political representatives in a representative democracy accountable, I think currently with how biased and how polarized everything is, that's not it doesn't do a very good job at doing so. Furthermore, I think that even though the media might not have as much leeway into the political representatives in a litocracy, a litocracy itself holds the government more accountable than a democracy because you have a diverse group of people from all sorts of backgrounds that are putting their input into these issues rather than just one party or one person in place, which that in and of itself has checks and balances and accountability to the government.
And more deliberation too. But
So my last question is in response to one of the points that the inside oftentimes raised was a concern for the aptitude of people who are witness fine. And I'm concerned if you think it would be a good policy or a bad policy to have some sort of checks on who can serve in the electorate, but whether it's occasional checks or anything you would think would have to be a filter that people would have to pass by in order to serve.
So I'd say, I would say, yes, there definitely does need to be at least some, form of checks for that. Just because at the same time, you don't want somebody that's extremely, it doesn't know anything about whatever, whatever issues you're kind of bringing forth at all. But I mean, the idea is that they're going to learn, they're going to investigate, these decision-making policies, and they're going to actually, obtain a much better understanding of their own politics. But at the same time, you also don't want someone who's like a very well-known, convicted, whatever criminal of some sort. It's like who's done heinous things to be the one representing you as well. So that's kind of taking away. Obviously, like by autocracy, there is a very large level of randomness in the who gets picked for the political position. But at the same time, like there does need to be some sort of regulation to it, because otherwise, you won't have, a 10-year-old that gets elected to the position, right? Or someone that was a convicted murderer, or, whatever. So although the fact that it's going to be random does help, underrepresented communities become more represented in that sort, there does need to be some type of regulation. Otherwise, it will just kind of go off the rails.
Great, thank you very much. So now I'll go to questions for the against side. So one of the issues that you guys put a lot of attention on is the skills that people bring to serving a democratic body, and it's important that this skill or information be at a higher level. That's why we have representatives. So I like to take an argument that the fourth side is making as a kind of challenge to that, which is that, well, as it is right now, the kind of information that the average voter has available to them is quite low. They don't have access to the resources in order to make very sound decisions on who to vote for. Whereas if they were serving a democratic body, they would have more access to the information, they would have access to experts, and so that the average member of a democratic body would have more information at their disposal than a typical voter. In which case, the fourth side might say something like, actually, it's in a democratic system, the decision makers have more information or higher aptitudes or better ability to make decisions. Are you worried about that? Why would the representative system, why would the lack of information voters be wrong?
So just like make sure what you're going on. You're saying that like we're worried about the lack of information, like in autocracy. Okay.
So yes, you're worried about the lack of information and the lack of knowledge or skills that a person randomly selected from autocracy would have when they serve in the body. But as the foresight made the argument, they say, well, they'll have access to information, they'll have experts, they'll be able to investigate issues more thoroughly. And they'll be able to investigate issues more thoroughly than the average voting citizen does.
Okay, I get you. So like I think like two main points that like against that is one, that takes time. So these people are, unless like they're gonna you're gonna know beforehand that you're gonna be brought into like the democracy 2 years beforehand. So let's say they're given 2 years to like be educated, stuff like that. That's still time taken. And also a lot of people won't want to have to deal with that because a lot of people have their own businesses, lives, entrepreneurship. They might be let's say working on firms, financial law and stuff like that. So that's one time that people do not want to take. So and another one is that as like aforementioned by our side is a thing with having experts and stuff like that, and having a third-party expert or having third-party advisors, is that can therefore lead to corruption. The whole idea of plutocracy is to remove corruption, but then that just reintroduces it with other people that can bring corruption. If let's say there's 20 advisors that are advising the whole democracy, and most of them are using as advisors, it's not the democracy and the 300 people in that democracy that are actually running it. It's those 20 advisors, and those 20 advisors can go get together and decide their agenda. So then therefore the advisors run their own agenda, and then therefore it brings back corruption. So to just say it again, it's gonna be one, a lot of time that people don't want to take, and then two, it's gonna lead back to corruption. Therefore using via like advisors like that.
And to continue with that point, we already in our society have a problem with separating politics from religion. If we introduce too much information into politics, it's now going to connect politics to personality. And although internally, mentally we like to connect those two things, someone's personality does not correlate with how someone from another country. And yeah.
So my second question, another theme of the foresight is with current forms of representative democracy, oftentimes the choices available to the average citizen are a choice between political parties, so it ends up providing a very limited range of choices. Whereas people who are randomly selected to serve on democratic bodies have a range of choices available to them, not just choosing one party or the other party. And so there's a way in which there's an enhancement of choices and options available to the democratic public. Do you see that as a gain for the democratic system, or are you also skeptical of the loss of political parties?
For the political parties thing, I think with that, because in our society right now, people might not be able to have as much time to educate themselves as they would. But with the political parties, it's kind of they'll be able to get an idea of what everyone's for and against, and with that, they'll be able to just go based on someone else. So I think that's a good thing, as they can still live their lives and still be part of the community and going about their ways for the government and stuff as they are. And as well, I think for the autocracy, giving them more choices, it might not always be the best. We do have more choices with the individual parties and stuff like that, with the Green Party and stuff, but we don't use that. So I think that's another point for that.
And to go off of that, another thing, as she was talking about, was the thing with like political parties and like how it kind of works within representative democracy is like, again, as you're saying, it's like centralized thought. Like a lot of people have the same ideas. You can watch like rallies, you can watch people talk, open talks between like politicians like that. So then therefore you're getting information through them, and you're getting information about your political party and what they believe in. And so you're saying, okay, so like these are the knowledgeable people, and then they're like, okay, maybe I should listen to them. It's like the same idea as like listening to your elders or watching like a debate, like let's say like John Locke and stuff like that. Versus autocracy, everyone has to kind of make their own opinion. And again, like piggybacking on the same thing, it's a lot of time. You have to come and make your own thoughts. You have to learn a lot. There's a lot to learn. Like this course is like very basic to politics and stuff like that. And then versus you have political parties, even though like it is like possibly centralized thought, you're still getting a lot of like more beneficial thing, and then you can make your own ideals off of what they say. You can agree or disagree because again, like you have the freedom to. Versus autocracy, you're making your whole it's like you're making your whole idea, and then that can clash with a lot of people. Because even though like a lot of people are gonna come together for the same idea, it might be a little less practical that a lot of people are gonna come together in the same idea because it's so much easier to just clash because they're not worried about being reelected.
So my last question is about an issue that both sides focused on, which is the kind of question of legitimacy and overall public trust. And one of the points that the fourth side made in other parts of their argument was that current attitudes are very mistrustful towards parties and political government overall, that there's not a lot of sense of legitimacy. Are you, how do you think about that? Those kind of reports that the current versions of representative democracy aren't succeeding on high levels of legitimacy or perceived legitimacy or high levels of public trust. And for foresight, this would be an advantage for autocracy. It might drive larger sense of public trust and perceived legitimacy. Do you think that's the case? Would we get larger percentages of public trust and perceived legitimacy with autocracy?
I don't think so, because like the autocracy is like a lottery. You're not gonna know the person unless like it just happens to be like a friend or a family member. So more likely or not, it's most likely not gonna be that possibility. So like you being able to get to know the person is very slim. So I don't see how there would be any trust in that person when you don't know like how they think, what their like their ideology is, or like any of that stuff.
I'd like to compare autocracy to like, let's just say like a public court system. Like you're not gonna ask like someone from the jury or someone in the back to go up and be the judge. They don't have that kind of background, they don't have that kind of knowledge, and so you're not gonna like randomly ask them to go do that because you don't know if they have the background knowledge to do any of the position in the court system.
Adding on to that, I feel like people already distrust politicians now, so a random selection is not gonna automatically create trust. Could probably make it worse, honestly. And if someone with no experience, knowledge, like anything of that background is suddenly put in charge of some major decisions like that, would the public trust them more than an elected leader?
Cool. Well, thank you both. Both sides very much. Let me stop the recording here.